The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
And that. Preaching this day, this message today to encourage us, because there's a mood in the air. There's some anxiety. There's fear. There's even depression. And the immediate thing that brings this upon us is this impending weather. Some of us have been glued to our televisions. We've been checking the weather report on our devices. And when that little alarm sounds alerting us to bad weather, we've been a little shaken. And I understand our concern, because about 8 months ago, we went through 2 storms back to back that did some serious damage in our community, and not only damage physical property, but emotionally we were shaken. So much so until there are still people who, when the thunder or lightning or rain or the wind sounds, they get a little shaky. So you got the context of those storms in January, and then Harvey is in our mind. We've seen those scenes from Texas. We've heard about the loss of life, the loss of property, and it's a dangerous, dangerous thing to be caught up in a hurricane, category 3, 4, 5. And then, now there's Irma. Initially, we were a little calm because the prediction said that Irma was going in another direction. But now it looks like Sister Irma may come our way. I wanted some bread yesterday because I had a taste for some peanut butter and jelly. And I went to the store. I couldn't find bread because folks scared. They bought up all the bread. They can't hardly find water. I got plenty of water because I just turned my faucet on, put me some in some jars. I had to go to 3 stations to find premium gas because y'all done bought up all the gas. Because you're afraid that something is going to happen and you want to be ready. And there's nothing wrong with being ready, but I just want to have a little talk today. And so there's this mood and there's this concern, and rightfully so. But what I want to try to make plain in this message, that there ought to be a line of concern that we as believers ought not cross. That while the world may be glued to the television and listening to all of the reports and just terrorized by it, that we as believers ought pay attention, but we ought not be terrified. Let me see if I can unpack this story so you can sleep tonight and you can help somebody else to sleep better. In this story, the Apostle Paul is at the center of it. He's been preaching the gospel to Gentiles and talking about God saving people through grace based on their faith in Jesus Christ. And the Jews who are religionists believes in the law, this old way, which means you had to earn or work your way to salvation by obeying the law and certain rituals like circumcision. And Paul said that had a time and a season, but it's over now, and God is saving by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. And brothers and sisters, that got him arrested. And they wanted him killed. And as a friend of mine said, they wanted him killed. And so while he was on trial, Sister Ingrid, Paul made a political move, a legal move, and said, I want to appeal my case to the highest court in the land, and that's Caesar, the emperor of Rome. And once the courts discovered that he was a Roman citizen, not just a mere Jew, it meant he had rights that a Jew didn't have in the Roman Empire. And so they set him on his way on the guard to Rome to meet with Caesar. And really, it was bigger than Paul, but God wanted the gospel taken to Rome, even to Caesar's palace. And there were believers waiting to hear the gospel in Rome, and then there were others who had heard about it but had never heard the gospel, who needed the gospel, and Paul was the person to go. And God worked in that courtroom situation to get him to Rome. And so on the guard, they placed him on a ship bound for Rome. And this ship takes him part of the way. And then they get off that ship and get on another ship to go the rest of the way. These were not cruise liners for passengers, but they were merchants' ships. And so here it is now, when Paul gets on the new ship, they begin to sail. And Paul says, and all of this is in chapter 27, you can read when you get home, you ought not leave right now. Why? Because it's September. And this time of the year, storms, those northeasters, come up on the sea, and we're going to be caught in a storm if we leave right now. But the men who were in charge of the ship, the owners and the captain, said, this little preacher don't know what he's talking about. We can handle this. And so they set sail. And just like Paul said, that wind started blowing. And they found themselves, if I may take a little liberty, in a Category 5 storm. And that storm started rocking that ship. That storm got so heavy that the clouds became dark, and it literally, several days passed when they saw no sunlight because the clouds and the darkness of the storm covered the sun. And they did everything humanly possible to secure the ship. They took ropes and tied around the ship to help hold it together. They set the sails in various ways, trying to take advantage of the wind to propel them, but nothing worked. They even started throwing stuff overboard to lighten the load, but everything they did, nothing worked. And some of the men wanted to get the lifeboats to jump overboard. But Paul says to the captain, can I tell you something? You better let them stay on this ship, because anybody who gets off now will surely lose their life. But if they stay on board, they can make it. How you know, Paul? Because last night, an angel of the Lord came to me and said, Paul, I have planned, I have decreed that you are going to testify before Caesar. And because you have that date with destiny, I'm going to make sure that you make it. And not only you, but I'm going to make sure all 276 men on this ship with you, that everybody makes it. You're going to lose the ship, but no life will be lost. And as you fast forward the story, the storm came, it tore up the ship, but they all made it safely to shore. And why? Because Paul said, God told me so. And I believe what he said. Now that's the story. So let me rewind and share something with you. When you look deeply at this story, there's some lessons for us about the storm that we're in, but also some other storms. I entitled the sermon, "We're Going to Survive This and That," because this represents this current storm that we're in, and that represents the storm that's going to come after this one. Because Irma is not the last one. And not only is it not the last natural storm, but we enter some other kind of storms. Those life storms, storms in your body, when your health takes a turn, storms in your personal life, when relationships take a turn, when children take a turn, when finances take a turn, when your job take a turn, when your neighborhood takes a turn, the city, storms just come. And it's going to be this one, and it's going to be another one, and another one. And so we're going to make it through this and that. Here it is. When we go deep, this is part of what we see, that this storm provided an opportunity for these people to go through a process that helps them to be better and to learn more about themselves and God. Here it is. They go through, if you will, a process of sifting. Sifting, young folk, is when you take flour or wheat and you sift it because you're trying to grind it and you're trying to separate the trash from what's real. So that when you cook your bread or whatever it is you cook, you've taken out all of the extra stuff that you don't need, like trash and garbage, and you got the pure flour, the pure wheat. And so, Pastor Simmons, how does that apply to us? Well, the folk on the boat had to do some sifting, because once they discovered that their lives were in jeopardy and some decisions had to be made in order to save their lives, they had to sift through everything on the ship and decide what was important. I told you that it was a merchant ship. And so on board the ship was cargo that they were going to sell when they got to Rome. Don't miss it. They took their money. They invested to buy this stuff. Some of them made this stuff by hand. They put it on the ship. They had other people's stuff on the ship, and they were going to sell it, make money for themselves, make money for the other people. But then, when it came time and their life was in the balance, because of this storm, they had to decide what's the most important thing on this ship. You know what they did? They took the cargo and they threw it in the water. And then they had some personal items, and they also had to sift through that and see what is it on here that I just got to have to live. You know what happened? They threw it overboard too. And in the midst of this storm, they discovered the stuff that they thought was important and essential to life wasn't that important and essential after all. When it came down to deciding what they really needed to live, they discovered that they didn't need all that. Can I ask you a question? How much of what you're trying to protect is essential for your life? If you had to make a decision, as some people in Florida had to do, to leave stuff behind, people in Texas had to do, to leave stuff behind, to give up stuff, what is it that you couldn't give up in order for your life? I want to believe that you will say to me, Pastor, there's nothing that I wouldn't give up and leave behind in order to save my life and the life of my family. If that is the case, then here is what I want you to remember. If it's not that important now, it ought not be that important on a day-to-day basis. some of the stuff that we think we gotta have, storms will help you sift through some stuff to really see if you got to have it. I know you sacrificed everything and thought you had to have that house. But really? Do you have to have it to live? I know you love that car and you had to have it, but if the storm was coming and you had to run back to get the car, would you risk your life for the car, or would you throw it overboard? Those shoes, those suits, those purses, those hats, those boots, them cowboy boots, those cars, that jewelry, that stuff that you cuss your children out about, that you do crazy stuff to get because you just got to have it. Is it really that essential? Can you throw it overboard? And you know that every day, again, some stuff gonna happen. And you gotta decide what's worth fighting over. What's more important than your life? Probably about 3 months after I got my Range Rover, maybe a little longer than that, I was at the Lenox Mall, and I came out to the mall, and Maya said, "Daddy, is that your car right there?" I said, "Yeah, that's it." Somebody had keyed down the side of my new car. I just got in it because it's a car. You go out there, and, well, it ain't out there now, but next time you see it, look at it, it's still keyed. Ain't wasting no money to get it painted. It's a car. It's not essential to my life. And if it catch on fire, I'm sure not going to go out there and try to jump out and put it out. I'm going to sit back there, and I'm going to call Allstate and say, "Bro, Gibson, it just burned." It's good to put stuff in perspective before you have to. And then here is something else that happened. They had to do some searching of their heart to see what they really believed. And you don't know what you really believe. You don't know what you really do until you're put in that position. Listen, Paul made suggestions, first of all, not to go. And then as the ship was in trouble, he made suggestions about what to do in order to survive. But the folk didn't want to hear him because he was just a little preacher. And the captain and the owners of the ship, they were experts in navigation and shipping and weather. Who's he? And so what they had to do was to decide who they were going to believe. Paul said, "I'm believing God." They said, "We're believing what these other folk are saying." Have you done any real soul searching? Searching your heart. Who is it that you really believe? Do you believe, and again, listen at me. I'm not saying bury your head in the sand and don't look at the news and don't all that. But let me ask you, who do you really believe? Do you believe that the people who are engaging in my opinion, a lot of hysteria, in these worst case scenarios, do you believe that they are the absolute source of truth? Do you believe that what they say, what Irma does, determines whether you live or die? Do you believe that your life is in your own hand and what you do will determine whether or not you survive? Do you think the only way you're going to make it is you buy all the bread you can buy? Man don't live by bread alone now, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. And listen. I'm not saying to you again, don't ignore it, don't take precautions. Do that, but don't you cross that line. I got my peanut butter and jelly and I'll be cool. But don't you cross that line of being anxious, of just being blown away, because you've heard what the National Weather Service said. I know what they said, but I'm not going to be rattled by what they said. I'm not going to be anxious by I'm not staying up all night watching the weather because of what they said. Jesus said, I neither slumber nor sleep, which means he going to be up. And if he's up, I'll let him watch over me. Because check this. When it comes, I can't do nothing about it. He can't, I can't. So, and I know how to stay in my lane. And so, what is it that you really believe? I know what we say in church. You know, can't do anything without you, can't sing without you. You know, we just got through saying that, but is that really what you believe? See, if you believe that, then you wouldn't be trying to do stuff without him. You've been working all week trying to hook up something, and you didn't even ask God to help you. That's why some of you didn't get it, and that's why some of you got it, and you hate you got it. Because God wasn't in it. Do you really believe that I look to the hills from whence cometh my help? Because all of my help comes from the Lord. Do you really believe, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not into your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and then he'll direct your path? See, if I really believe that, then that means I'm not going to depend on Simmons to figure it out. What do you really believe? This storm provides an opportunity for us to search ourselves and see what we really believe. There are people who stayed home today because they didn't believe that God could take care of them in this weather. They felt like the safest place for them was home. I'll just leave that right there. But simply to say, the safest place is not home. I'm not even saying the safest place is here, but it's surely not home. And so what is it that you really believe? Do you believe God's report or his? And if you believe his, here's what I suggest to you. Get the news, stay up to date, be prepared. But in the midst of getting that report, put your head in the book and get a report from here. I won't call her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but I heard one of our members who's here this morning. I saw her on Facebook making some declarations about what God would do. And so what you need to do is make some declarations out of his word. So pick up his word, find it. The Lord is my refuge. He's a shelter in a storm. The Lord said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. The Lord said, no weapon formed against me will prosper. And you just find you something and just declare his word over your life so you have something to counteract what you hear on the news. And at least I'll tarry too long. The third thing I want to share with you is that they also had an opportunity to see the salvation of God. The men, like I said a moment ago, some decided to get on the raft boats, the little raft boats, and come to shore. And Paul said, don't do that. If you do it, you're going to die. And once it was imminent that the ship was going to wreck, the guards who were overseeing Paul and the other prisoners on the ship said, well, let's shoot the prisoners, because if they escape, we're going to be in trouble. But one of them, who God had caused to favor Paul, said, don't kill any of them. And don't miss this, the other prisoners were saved because of Paul's favor. Said, don't kill a one, but spare them all. And here is what they didn't know, is that God was getting ready to deliver. And can I tell you something? When God gets ready to deliver, God doesn't need anybody's help. And that God's ability to deliver is not hindered by a storm. Look at God's plan. The plan was this. Those of you who can swim, jump in, swim to the shore. Those of you that can't swim, the ship is going to break up. You get you some boards and broken pieces and hang on to them and just float and kick your way onto the shore. Let me take a little homiletical latitude here. And by that I mean, let me just use an illustration that's not directly out of the text, but it makes sense. And here it is. There are two groups of people who this storm is going to hit. Listen, there are swimmers and there are non-swimmers. Swimmers are the folk who have insurance to help make them whole. Swimmers are the people who have resources. You've got somewhere to go stay. You got a little money. You can check in the Hilton and stay until the end of the year if you want to, because you got that kind of money. You got some backup. The house you live in, if the storm tears it up, that's not your only house, because you got another house somewhere else. You got a summer home, a winter home. And so God has blessed you to be like that. And so for the swimmers, God will take care of you. But then there are the non-swimmers, folk whose insurance are not adequate, or they don't have insurance at all. Folk who don't have the resources to check into the hotels, so they're going to have to stay at Mount Zion and the Civic Center and other places. Folk who don't have resources to take care of them, they're going to need somebody to feed them, somebody to take care of them, because they can't take care of themselves. But here's what God says. I'm going to take the broken pieces from the storm, and that's what's going to get you through. I may not save all your stuff. You may lose some of the non-essential stuff, but what you got is your life, and you're going to keep that. You may have to end up getting broken pieces from your life and then using that to be put back together again. But one way or another, everybody will get through this. That's a place right there for you to give God some praise. Well, Pastor Simmons, so God caused them to sift through what was important, and they discovered that they could do without that stuff, and money and materialism was not essential for life, and they discovered that they really needed to start putting their faith in the captain and others and put their faith in Paul's God, as Paul did, and they discovered that God could save. But here is an underlying question that caught my attention. Why in the world would God save all 276? He allowed them to get in the storm. He could have stopped it, but he allowed the storm. But then he saved them. One, the opportunities that we've talked about to go through these experiences that make them better people and help them understand who they are and who God is.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.